I'd like to open up the question to all three of you, Andrii, Andy, and Dan, about the possibility of partisan warfare. In talks about Ukraine and speeches about Ukraine here in the US, I've often cited the statistic that from 44 to 1954, more Soviet security personnel were killed in Western Ukraine than during the decade in Afghanistan, which is a fact. As you know, after the 2014 invasion of Russia of Ukraine, there have been a whole series of movies basically glorifying the UPA and the OUN on partisan warfare. I'm sort of waiting for it to start. There's been a few assassinations in the occupied areas in Kherson. I open up to all three of you. Do you see this as potentially starting up, or are people waiting for a prospect of liberation before they make their move? What is happening on the partisan warfare front?
I mean, Joe, I'd say, the two items there, organic growth of the party, ground up partisans, people who live out, in occupied territories, just taking arms up by themselves. And I think you'll see that happen. But I think the Ukrainian Special Forces Command have also developed a fairly sophisticated partisan warfare plan themselves to instigate partisan warfare and infiltrate people. So I think, no matter how you define it, you will see, I think, more increasingly and effective activity in Russian areas, including sabotage, assassination, interference with supplies, coupled with the further reach of HIMARS artillery. So I think it's going to be increasingly difficult for the Russians to maintain occupation.
Okay, just to follow up on that, Andy, once again, do you think people in the US and the West might see some sort of breakthrough in Kherson this summer and late July, August, where the Russian lines will be ruptured? Russians units may be isolated from Crimea resupply. Do you see the prospect of that kind of breakthrough?
I see that prospect in the future. I can't say how quickly.
Yeah. And just to keep with you, Andy, you mentioned that you thought that the war had been poorly managed by some individuals. As you may recall, about 18 months ago, I went down to southern Kherson, Skadovsk, Oresky Sands, and we all know, history tells us that narrow isthmus into Crimea, even the Red Army didn't try to go through there. They marched across the swamps. Why did the Ukrainian army allow the Russians to roll out of Crimea on that very narrow isthmus that could have been cut? And I'll just add one quick thing. I've been several times to the DMZ between the two Koreas. Things there are so simple that you have 10 tons of concrete. It just takes putting a little hand grenade and the concrete block falls down and blocks the highway. As I could see, nothing was done. And I had friends who were down there with the OSC and others, and they saw very little preparation for what was sort of a no-brainer, that the Russians would roll out of Crimea and into Kherson.
If I was down in Kherson, south of the Dnieper, last April, last May, and the highway, between Kherson and Novokhovka, south of the river, is as good a highway as I've seen anywhere in the world. And there's similar accounts of the highway between Belgorod, Russia, and Konotop and Sumy being, extremely well resurfaced recently. There have been allegations that it's clearly someone in government has been very supportive of creating good entries, good approaches for Russian troops. So I think you see that people in the Ukrainian government has been infiltrated by Russian intelligence, and decisions were made and resources allocated to facilitate that. And I think the Ukrainians have a fair amount to do in cleaning house and identifying why these roads were built, why certain things were done. There have been allegations made about certain officials that are not people maybe not paying enough attention to. Maybe they will later on. But Russian intelligence is a cancer, and it's difficult. I sympathize with the administration or with honest Ukrainian politicians who are trying to get rid of it because it's everywhere, and you never know who you can trust or what their motives are. But clearly, there's been collaboration with Kyiv's senior officials in facilitating those.
Well, there was awareness of this problem. I remember when I was writing about the highway projects, the Ukraine did not want to go accept a $50 million loan from Hungary to upgrade the roads into Uzhhorod, because basically all roads led to Budapest, all bridges led to Budapest, and they saw this as a potential security issue to allow Hungarians to come in at 100 kilometers an hour. But that's something to look back, Monday morning quarterbacking, what did happen. On these two topics, partisan warfare, breakthrough, Dan, Andrii, do you have thoughts?
I can just confirm that the information which was publicly spread that Zelensky ordered to liberalize Kherson, it's official confirmation of the plans which are under development. So now it's not a secret anymore. And we see the possibilities to liberalize Kherson. And definitely, I think that it will be a breaking point in this campaign.
It's kind of been interesting. I mean, you have this romanticism around partisans and guerrillas and guerrilla warfare. It's actually, if we end up in a partisan warfare, it's a pretty bad situation, because it means our army has been destroyed. But to this point in time, it's been very interesting, because you have this whole circle around Melitopol where all of this stuff the reports first surfaced. And it seems to be, maybe, just from the reports, it seems to be spreading, taking out, as the Russians have appointed what they call Gauleiters, the local collaborators, and then their cars blow up, the entrance ways to their apartment buildings blow up, and people get shot in cafes. I mean, it's straight out of movies. But now it's happening in Donetsk and in Luhansk and other places. And I don't think it's an accident that those bases, the HIMARS are highly accurate, but you gotta give them the right coordinates and things. So I think there's a lot going on, and I think Andy, my impression, Andy's closer to it than I am, I'm sure, but I think that the point he made is right, that this is not a devil come what may type of situation. This is highly organized, highly coordinated, as part of a plan. And I suspect that as the offensive rolls out, whenever that will be, especially in the south, I think you'll see that taking a more role. And you look at the population. I mean, I think this is really the story of this war, has been the consolidation of the Ukrainian people around total warfare, total resistance. The Russians have had very, very bad, almost no traction in all of these, Russification and integration objectives and everything else that they've started, because people are actually even being passive aggressive. They're just saying, we're not playing ball. We're not showing up. We're not going to take your humanitarian aid. We're not going to take your passports. And that, coupled with getting shot is quite a detriment, and it plays with their heads. And there's a big psychological warfare that's going on right now. And the HIMARS are now a new phase of that. So I think this works on multiple levels.
Yeah, Andrii?
If you allow me a short comment about weather, because Andrew was talking about weather, and definitely all Russians' war during last, I think, 200 years was won or lost because of weather. And in fact, they already miscalculated weather, because thanks for global warming. So even you remember in last December, everyone was saying that yes, attack is possible in February.